Okay,
Do I hear 7:30, 7:30?
Yeah, I give 7:30.
okay, Chris.
Thousands of dollars.
He's back. He's back. Just to reach
Let me know when you got 7:30.
Okay.
Thousands of dollars.
Oh, dear.
Over years, not 1 year. Okay, I'll buy that. Same time as the cost of
It never happens when you're watching people.
Tina will be here shortly. Her daughter's being honored at Hinsdale South. I think the board meeting. She was a member of the soccer team that won 4th place in state. So she'll be here a little bit later.
cup, so it just looks like a plastic plate or something. That would pop open. Right. One goes up to they all go up.
Receiving of communications.
It is 7:30 now.
I'd like to call our city council meeting to order and ask everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The roll, please.
Belkey. Belzak.
Here.
Kenny.
Here.
Marquez.
Here.
McIver.
Here.
Shower.
Here.
Seifert.
Here.
6 present.
We have a quorum. The next item on the agenda is questions, comments, and announcements of a general nature. We added this to our agenda a number of years ago, actually, to allow anyone in the audience who couldn't stick around for the whole meeting to address the city council on any subject matter that they had a question on. So I'd like to offer that to any Darien residents in the audience regarding any questions or comments you might have. Then let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes of June 2nd, 2014. Do I have a motion to approve? Alderman Kenny, seconded by Alderman Seifert. Any additions or deletions for the clerk? Then the roll, please.
Kenny.
Aye.
Seifert.
Aye.
Shower.
Aye.
McIver.
Abstain.
Marquez.
Aye.
Belzak.
Aye.
1 absent, 5 ayes, and 1 abstain.
And guess what? The one absent just showed up.
Here.
We're approving the minutes from June the 2nd. Belkey.
Aye.
The next item on the agenda is receiving of communications. I have one to share. It's a thank you to our staff, in particular Ashley Pruder, for attending the annual Kids Safety Expo that was held by Senator Redonio, Representative Jim Durkin, and Representative Ron Sandek. Were very appreciative of our efforts to participate in the event, so I'd like to pass that on for the record. Any other communications to share? Then let's move on to the mayor's report, and we have a proclamation to read this evening, but before I do that, I'd like to turn it over to Alderman Marquez to give us and the viewing audience an explanation of what this proclamation is all about tonight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like my cohort partner here, Ray Krasinski, to come forward. Back in August last year, Ray and I had this idea to offer what we thought was a necessary award, and that was a humanitarian award. The Lions Club sees itself as a humanitarian organization. And just to mention, this last year, under Lion Jim Kaiser's presidency, our club has distributed $46,000 to local organizations and to state organizations, which I think speaks to who we are as a club. But with regard to this award itself, I'm going to let Ray just give a real brief history. Ray?
Thank you, Joe. The Darien Lions Club reaches out to, of course, the community of Darien, but we also reach out a little further into Westmont and Downers Grove, Clarendon Hills, and some of the other communities. And we felt in honoring someone, we wanted to honor someone that provided human services, not just to Darien, but to a little further reach, sort of under our wing, a little broader reach. So we developed this award, the Humanitarian of the Year Award, to recognize, that individual who not only serves Darien, but serves humanity. So it's a bigger, more global perspective of what this award provides. And we sent out invitations asking people to be nominated, and we were very pleased. For the inaugural year, the first time we're doing this, we had 5 nominees, all incredibly deserving. And as you often have when you're selecting someone for an award, someone rises to the top. And that's who we are recognizing here. And I want to thank the mayor and city council for allowing us to do this here at this venue. And this would be a good time to read the proclamation.
Thank you, gentlemen. Jim, were you going to speak at all?
Nope, Ray said it all.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Okay, did you want to take a seat? Okay, thank you. And the mayor proclamation is to honor Hank. Now, let me be sure I'm saying the last name correctly. Anzalone?
Anzalone.
I will, yes, it's okay. Hank Anzalone Day. Whereas Hank and Linda Anzalone have been residents of Westmont since 1968, and whereas Hank and Linda have 4 children and 3 grandchildren, and whereas Hank Anzalone is retired from United Airlines, and whereas Hank Anzalone is a parishioner of Holy Trinity Church in Westmont, and whereas Hank Anzalone serves the church in various capacities, Eucharistic minister, parish council member, worship committee member, religious education, RCIA, parish outreach, chairperson of the Heart of the Christ organization, Holy Trinity Manna Program, and Parish Building Fund, where he helped raise $4.3 million. And whereas Hank Anzalone actively serves the following organizations: Special Events Volunteer for Taste of Westmont, Junior Achievement, Westmont Park District Biddy Basketball, is that Biddy? Okay, Biddy Basketball Coach, and I didn't know if it was Buddy, okay. Biddy Basketball Coach and T-Ball Coach, and Community Unit School District 201 Crafts Instructor, Boy Scout Glass Blowing Instructor, and Knights of Columbus Grand Knight of St. John's Council number 3785. And whereas Hank Anzalone has served as site coordinator for the People's Resource Center since 2002, and whereas as site coordinator, Hank Anzalone seeks out potential donors, recruits and trains volunteers, coordinates deliveries and donations, schedules workers, works within the goal of the People's Resource Center to serve the community with a neighbor-to-neighbor philosophy. And whereas the People's Resource Center and Hank Anzalone serve over 1,000 families in need from Westmont and surrounding communities, and nearly 33,000 DuPage residents rely on the People's Resource Center for help and assistance. And whereas Hank Anzalone was nominated for a 2014 Knights of Columbus Master Knight Award, and whereas Hank Anzalone received the Westmont Rotary Club Paul Harris Fellowship recognition, and whereas Hank Anzalone was Westmont's 2012 Citizen of the Year, and whereas Hank is the first recipient of the Darien Lions Club Humanitarian Award, now therefore I, Kathleen Weaver, Mayor of the City of Darien, do hereby proclaim June 16th, 2014 as Hank Anzalone Day in the City of Darien and recognize his many contributions to church and community. And we don't take I'd like to ask Hank to come forward and receive this proclamation and our congratulations for this award. And Hank, if you'd like to say a few words.
Never without words.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Joe told me I was getting a brick. I never heard about getting a day before. This is great. Everybody knows I talk off the cuff and I can talk very shortly, so I won't hold up the meeting long. But I wanted to point out a couple of things. A number of years back, there was an item that appeared that said, all that I needed to know I learned in kindergarten. I think everybody might have read that. And that might be true, but I never went to kindergarten. And I always use that as an excuse for not being able to cut straight, not being able to sing on key, exhausting spell check every time I write a paper. It all stings back. But the truth is that what I learned was loving and caring and service from my parents first, from my family, and from so many friends and colleagues that I have come in contact with. And any recognition really reflects so much on them. And when you talk about service, everything with service, you know, I'm just finishing up my term as Grand Knight with the Knights of Columbus. That was in service to one, in service to all. The People's Resource Center is all about service, neighbor to neighbor. And with the Lions, just simple, we serve. It's so wonderful to receive this from the Lions, and I treasure it, and it's all because of all my friends and family that are here. Thank you so much. Thanks, Village of Darien. I appreciate this.
Thank you. Oops, I guess, well, Jim, did you want to come up front to do that at the podium? Okay, we're not going to twist your arm, right, Jim? Okay, so you can, okay. All right, so you can present that.
Okay, can't say Lion Hank because they haven't gotten you into that one yet. But Hank, in honor of you becoming our first humanitarian, you are now a member of our Darien Lions Foundation as a fellow. So congratulations.
I would be remiss in not recognizing some special guests we have this evening with us. We happen to have the mayor of Westmont, Ron Guntner, with us this evening, and a couple of trustees with us this evening. So, Jim Addington, who has been around for a very long time. And Sue Seneca, two trustees for the Village of Westmont. So welcome. I guess the Lions Club is hosting a cake and coffee next door?
Right, there'll be a cake and coffee reception for Hank next door following the city council meeting. So thank you again. I just wanted to mention, by the way, that we had 5 nominees. Hank had 10 people nominate him, including Ron and Jim Addington. So when we sat down to discuss who was going to get this award, we didn't even get a chance to discuss the other candidates because Hank just stood out as the individual who was most deserving. So thank you, Ron, and thank you, Jim, and thank you to all the nominators who nominated Hank. We appreciate it.
Okay. Yes, I don't want you to feel that you have to sit through the rest of this meeting. If you wanted to, is the cake and coffee starting immediately?
I think is it? Okay.
I think everyone can talk amongst themselves while you're waiting for whatever's coming. Thank you. Thank you all for attending. Are you're gonna find out how you really do it, right? Is that what you're gonna stick around on?
Nice man.
We'll wait till the audience leaves.
We need to get that air conditioning worked on.
Well, it was nice and cool when we first
How was the ceremony? Good. It was before the school board, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was 6 other award people, so,
Really?
yeah.
You saw my message. We should bring them here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that. Okay.
This was honoring you.
the Hinsdale South girls soccer team placed fourth in state, so that's where Alderman Belke was earlier, but I think we should recognize them here. Claire, I think it will be safe to bring up you, if Claire Bongiovanni, to give us the Darien Chamber update.
Good evening. The Darien Chamber would like to welcome new chamber member MFC Sports Performances located at 8251 Lamont Road in Darien. Happy one-year anniversary to Chuck Southern Comforts Cafe. Join them for food and drink specials today through June 20th. Don't forget to bring your Shop Local, Shop Darien preferred card. For more details on their specials, visit www.chuckscafe.com. Finan Animal Hospital, located at 2415 75th Street, is celebrating their ribbon-cutting ceremony on June 24th at 5 p.m. Stop by to meet Dr. April Finan and her staff. Darien Fest will be held September 5th through 7th at Darien Community Park. Sponsorship opportunities are now available. All Darien businesses are invited to sponsor this annual community event. For more details, call me at 630-968-0004. The third annual Darien Idol and Battle of the Bands will be held Sunday, September 7th, along with the second annual Pep Parade. Register online at DarienChamber.com. Summer is going to rock for the Darien Chamber. Q Bar and Grill is hosting PM networking events June 18th, July 16th, and August 13th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. The events include networking, food, and live music. All Darien businesses are invited to attend. The Darien Chamber is excited to partner with the Park District for Concerts in the Park, which will be held at Darien Community Park on Wednesdays through August 20th. The Chamber is selling beer, wine, water, and soft drinks at all the adult concerts, and Chuck Southern Comforts Cafe will be there selling delicious food. Don't forget to visit the Darien Farmers Market Wednesdays through October 8th from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the north end of Darien Community Park. The Darien Historical Society will host their annual ice cream social this Wednesday, 6 p.m. The 2014-2015 Shop Local, Shop Darien cards are now available at the Chamber office for $5. The expiration date has been extended to December 2015. Join Chestnut Court for their Summer Bash weekend. The event kicks off with Ladies' Night, July 25th, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. with a live DJ and dancing, Touch a Truck on July 26th from noon to 2 p.m., and a food drive to benefit Our Lady of Mount Carmel on July 27th from noon to 5 p.m. Selected merchants will participate in a weekend-long sidewalk sale. Save the date for Dancing with the Chamber Stars, a gala event, which will be held November 14th. At Ashton Place, the event will feature celebrity dancers from Darien businesses, organizations, and government. That's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Government, who's dancing?
Not me.
We already had yours.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Claire.
Ted's dancing.
Ted.
No.
He wants to
not
make
at
the
all.
cover of
Motion for
Neighbors
Ted
again.
dancing? Thanks, Roy.
Your second?
Decline. We need a good laugh.
Thank you, saved me. Okay. Let's move on to the Darien Clerk's report.
Just one item, Madam Mayor. City offices will be closed on Friday, July 4th in observance of Independence Day.
Thank you. City Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mayor Weaver. Just one item. Some residents have contacted us over the last few meetings about the sound during the meetings at home while they're watching on cable. We have a staff member, a consultant here tonight One of the problems we had is not really being here during the meeting with the people that are knowledgeable on the equipment. So we got an email tonight that the sound is better, so hopefully this will be, put things on a better track. It's coordination between computer, sound systems, cameras, all kinds of things, but hopefully you'll notice the improvement.
Thank you. Let's move to department head information and questions. Chief, I believe you have a number of reports here.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Mrs. Mayor, City Council members. I'm going to begin with the two-year report. In the April Police Committee meeting, the Police Committee Chair asked that we put together a two-year report, and so we have that report now. Before we get started, there are a couple of changes I want to make the council aware of, and everybody who has a copy. In the editing process, I removed a table from the report and neglected in the proofreading to change the numbering system. So if you'll go to page 6, the reference to table 7 on page 6 actually should refer to table 6. On pages 9 and 10, there's a reference to table 8. That table should be reflected as table 7. And on page 14, the table that's reflected as table 9 should actually be table 8. As we get started, a two-year report is somewhat difficult to encapsulize two years worth of effort, because there are a lot of things that take place. There are a lot of things that take place that we do that really don't rise to recollection, and so it was a bit of a daunting process trying to recall all the things that have taken place over the past 2.5 years. So we'll do the best we can to encapsulate what we've experienced in the last 2.5 years and try to make it as plain as possible. And hopefully you'll have a better understanding of how we've arrived at the point that we are now. So what you see here in the first slide, the slides top left, bottom left, and bottom right all are depictions of our simulator system. And on the top right, three of our officers were actually awarded a life-saving award by the Darwood Fire Service for a life-saving effort where they arrived on the scene and sustained the life of a patient until the fire department arrived. And so what it shows is a healthy mix between technology, traditional police values, and contemporary management models for policing that are not just local but globally accepted. The biggest philosophical change is that management decisions should be based upon quantifiable data. Every aspect of the agency can and must be managed. With the management mantle comes an accountability at all levels. Decisions based upon data must be implemented, so simply having the data is not good enough. If we don't do something about that data, then it's just information that has no meaning. Determinations about available discretionary time and other unallocated time will create for us the opportunities to prevent crime. Data will also create decisions about workloads, resource allocation, data-driven missions, crime fighting, and crime prevention initiatives. Now, what this does is this places us squarely in the midst of an organizational change. For those of you who are in business or what have you, change management is one of the most difficult organizational endeavors. As an academic process or as a practical application, it's believed to take 5 to 8 years to fully implement. The need for organizational change is not based on a lack of capacity. Clearly, the Darien Police Department had successfully investigated the Kramer homicide before any of these changes started. So it's not based on capacity. What it is based on is a lack of core processes that will always lead to success and not just sometimes lead to success. These best practices often require a change of mindset, change in the traditional values on how we've done things. And change is always difficult. Change is always going to be met with resistance, but change can be managed. Change process for us involved data or intelligence-based decision-making, management rather than simple oversight, accountability, resource allocation, crime analysis, crime prevention, investigations, community engagement, and a view at technology and liability changes.
Chief, one comment. When you and I were talking, we wanted to make sure that as you're going through this, if the council has questions during the presentation or during the report, they should ask at that time.
Yes,
Okay.
and you need not wait because you may forget or we may get bogged down in something else. So if you have a question, please stop me. So what data did we look at? We looked at call volume, the number of calls 911 calls we actually received, call distribution by time of day, call distribution by beat, which beats is crime occurring on, time expended on response to 911 calls, distinguishing between 911 calls and self-initiated activity, how much time was spent on self-initiated activity, training time, unallocated time, reported crimes, and the locations by which beat that crimes were being reported on.
Chief, sorry
Yes.
to interrupt, but for the audience, can you explain what the self-initiated?
Self-initiated crime is any self-initiated activity, I should say, is any circumstance where an officer initiates or generates the activity. That's activity that's not the result of a 911 call. So if an officer is driving down the street and wants to check on an abandoned house or an empty house, or is driving down the street and wants to stop a vehicle, that's all self-initiated activity. And so we look at call distribution, and this is what turns data into intelligence. We look at the calls being distributed by days, afternoons, midnight shift, and mini midnight shift. So we look at, starting at 2011, this data was not available to us, or it was not available in the manner that we could best use it in. 2012, we see there were 7,029 911 calls. In 2013, 6,550. And 2014, up to April, the end of April, there were 1,976. On the staffing side, we see what we did is we staffed at the same level on all three shifts.
Chief, they went to a new system, and that's why we don't have the data for 2011. But there is data. It's just it would be apples and oranges comparing it to 12, 13, or 14. Correct?
We had our own internal system at that time, and it's my understanding that that data was not kept, so we don't have it. So
Why would the data not be kept? Isn't that kind of by law? You have to keep data like that?
no, this type of data is not mandated by law. It's mandated by best practices, but it's not. I mean, when you say, was it kept or are calls kept? No, generally there's a retention period on 911 calls. It's 30 days, unless there's a request for it to be held longer than that for either litigation purposes or where there's a criminal incident. That specific information has to be requested to be held. Generally, the retention is 30 days on a 911 call.
Chief, there were some statistics that we were able to present. I know it took a long time. If you wanted to find, how many times you're at a particular address, it would take forever, and some of that was a manual check.
It was manually
So I don't know
mined.
if Greg's aware of the system we used in the past, but certainly was not efficient or certainly was not very effective.
Well, I think immediately prior to my arrival, the deputy chief at that time, Deputy Chief Scala, had commissioned an effort on overtime, and from what I'm understanding, it took about 4.5, 5 months because it was a manual effort and it was exhaustive. So,
Okay. Thank you.
so what we're looking at here is what makes this data into intelligence. Simply knowing what time of day 911 calls are generated gives us some decision-making capabilities that we didn't have before. So what we do now is we look at the raw data that has become intelligence and look at it by percentages. A better way to look at it is on this bar graph here, and what we see is that throughout the last 2.5 years or so, that the trend has remained consistent, that after the afternoon shift is clearly the busier shift, the day shift is slightly less busy, and the midnight shift is even less busy. And so ultimately what we get is, over the past 2 years, we get about 6,800 911 calls per year. Call distribution based upon time of day revealed consistently that 39% of the call volume occurs during the day, about 45% occurs on the afternoon shift, 15% occurs on the midnight shift, with 8% occurring during the first 4 hours of the shift, and 7% or slightly less occur during the last 4 hours of the shift. So what did we do with the data? We looked at the 911 calls, we looked at officer activity, what types of crimes occur, and where to focus our police enforcement efforts. 911 call distribution by time of day. Most of the calls occur on afternoons and days, so we establish a power shift. 911 call distribution by beat. We allocate resources, manage discretionary activity. One of the most critical functions, if you'll follow along, is that distinguishing. All of our activity is documented on what's called a CFS, or call for service. That encompasses every call for service. So we have to distinguish between what calls are self-generated and what calls are citizen-generated. And so we've talked about the citizen-generated, or the 911 calls. This table reflects for us what the self-generated activity looks like in terms of volume. On the top level, the number of events created, and on the second column, the second line rather, the amount of time expended, and on the third column we have the no beats. Now what a no beat is, and this is very interesting and extremely important, is when, based on the officer identifying where he or she was, there was no beat assigned to the address that was given to the dispatcher. So if the officer generated the information from a PMDC or from through the radio, there was no beat assigned. So from a management perspective, we're not being able to tell where our resources are being allocated. So what you can see here is that the first year that we started this, there were almost 8,000 no beats. So we didn't know where our officers were on 8,000 different events. In 2013, we see that's down from 1,711. This year, we anticipate it'll be down. So now some of that is housekeeping stuff, where we had to talk to our officers about making sure that you gave an address that was consistent with being assigned a beat. But we also had to talk to DUCOM about making sure that the geocoding in the 911 system was correct, so that when we gave an address with just cross streets, that we were actually giving good information. All of this led us to a workload analysis, or a workload overview, and I'll go the first line. It gives us the total 911 hours. See, in 2012 it's 1,861. 2013 is 5,137, and we see it's 1,774 in 2014. The next line is self-generated hours spent, and it's 4,000 and some change there in 2012, 9,200 in 2013, and we're at almost 5,000 for 2014. Training hours, we see that that's continued to grow, and we're continuously looking at training. Everything we do, this is an evolutionary document. Evolutionary, not that it's unique, but it's going to be consistently evolving. Change management is going to be an ongoing thing. As we identify different areas to look at, or different ways we can do things, we're going to be doing those differently. So we may, even though training seems to be on the incline now, I had a talk with Ed Rink, our training coordinator. He said, you know, we've always operated under the notion that the more training, the better, and that we somehow limit our liability with more training. And there's certain areas where that's not necessarily the case, that your liability remains consistent across the board, whether you have training once every 2 years or once every 5 years. And so we're going to be looking at some training in certain areas to make sure that we're operating at the most efficient level. And that's one of the biggest philosophical changes here, is making sure that our efficiencies are what they should be. Then we look at the total allocated time, and this is a combination of the 911 calls, self-generated calls, and training time, and we see what that is. So then the next calculation that we do is we look at the total number of hours available for our entire patrol staff. And so what we did is we calculated 21 officers times 142 hours per month over the 13-month period, police year, and it came to 39,585 for 2012. So that's the time we could have used, and so we subtract our total allocated time, time that was committed to one of the activities above, and then subtract that, and that's what when we come up with our unallocated time. Now, unallocated time is really important because it tells us how much time we actually have to manage. Doesn't mean it's a call for us to get rid of officers or change the way we do business. What it tells us, this is time that we have to manage crime. This is the time that we have to focus on mission-driven activity. The next call, the table that we look at is looking at how the crime or how the calls are distributed by beats. The 911 calls are distributed by beats. So we have beats 1, beats 2, and beat 3. Now these are 911 calls, and because there are always specific addresses to a 911 call, we have fewer null beats where no beat was assigned. That's why those numbers are so small. The goal is to actually drive that to 0 across the board. And so that's one of the goals that as a management team we're working towards, is to drive that number to 0. Again, understanding where calls are occurring determines how you allocate resources. So it's absolutely critical that we know that. The data we've just reviewed should create a shift in the paradigm regarding scheduling. In other words, a change in scheduling should involve us scheduling based on what we know from our historical data is most likely to happen, not what could happen. We've traditionally scheduled for, well, what happens if this happens, or what do we do if this happens? And you can't, that's not the most prudent or efficient way to schedule. What we want to do is make a decision to schedule based on what we know is most likely to happen based on the historical data. And as you saw from the bar graphs and the tables, what's most likely to happen is 39% of the calls are likely to occur on days, 44 or 45% on afternoons, and 15% on evenings and on midnights. And that's the way we should be scheduling, especially when we look at 7% or less of our calls are going to be happening between the hours of 3 and 7 in the morning. And so that's a critical change. In addition, if we do schedule based on what's most likely to happen, and there's an anomalous incident that occurs, we have mutual aid agreements that are in place that we can call on other municipalities to assist us. So it's not like when we make these scheduling decisions, there's no compensation for it. In addition to scheduling and other management decisions, it also brings us to a point of some new technology and new terminology, and that new terminology consists of return on investment. Now, return on investment does not necessarily measure economic return, but it measures a social return and social impact, crime-fighting impact, and the overall benefit to the citizens of Darien, as well as the police department. And so some of the things that the return on investment causes us to take a look at is our overweight truck enforcement. It's a very labor and time-intensive endeavor. The scales cost us to pay for, they cost us to recertify, and we have to make sure our officers are trained in that. And the problem with that, in my mindset, is that there's not a very big return to the citizens of Darien. When we look at how we allocate or what we do with our discretionary time, we're certainly better served if we can drive residential burglaries down, or drive burglaries to the motor vehicle down, or to domestics down, or robberies down, or thefts down, if we're allocating our discretionary time to something other than overweight truck enforcement. We also looked at how we issue citations. Interestingly enough, there was a law that was passed, I think it was today, it was signed into effect today, that limits our ability to measure efficiency of our officers from issuance of citations. Now, based on the way the law is written, we can still use it to use performance and traffic stops, but we can't use that as a determination to measure officers in terms of how many citations they issued, whether they were written or warnings. So, but those are the things that we're looking at in terms of how to allocate our resources and what our discretionary time means. The next phase of our philosophical change and transition is a management model. The idea that every aspect of the police department not only can be managed, but should be managed. Sergeants, who are the day-to-day shift managers, would do the managing. In the assessment, we developed a list of those issues and items to manage. One of the first issues that we saw was we looked at the crime data and the events in Darien Community Park in 2012 and realized that if park isn't safe, then nobody's going to feel safe. And if people stop going to the park, then they will be displaced. If decent, hardworking, honest families stop going to the park, somebody's going to be in the park, and it will be the people who are least desirable or who are looking to commit crimes. And so when we took actions to intervene in that, well, that worked out fine, but then we realized that there was a balloon effect because a lot of the people who had collaborated or congregated at the park were now congregating at McDonald's. And so one of our managers, Jim Topol, worked extensively with McDonald's Corp. He and I met with the corporate security people. We worked out a strategy to eliminate what we call in law enforcement the balloon effect. So basically what we did is when we squeezed the balloon at the park district, the people, the air or the people went to McDonald's. And so with the management took an active step in eliminating the balloon effect at McDonald's. We looked at every aspect of the agency. We looked at overtime, fleet longevity, planned events with other agencies. The first year we reduced crime in the park to almost zero and reduced burglaries to the motor vehicles by 18%. And the second year we reduced motor vehicle burglary to the motor vehicle by 59.2%. So looking at managing resources does have an impact. Once managers receive the authority to manage, then comes the accountability. Everybody is held accountable at every level of management. What the resources are, we give them the resources they need. So now when a manager's on shift, the shift manager's on duty, anything that occurs is his responsibility. If the detectives are called in, even though Sergeant Charay is a detective coordinator, the detectives are responsible to the shift manager. Accountability empowers the manager and helps the manager focus on the law enforcement efforts and achieving the goals of and the mission of the agency. Accountability simply means the manager is responsible and accountable for everything on the shift. And I think it's critical to create a distinction between managers and supervisors. Supervisor makes sure or ensures that an employee is at work. The manager makes sure that he does what the employee does matches with the overarching goals and mission of the agency. So that's the distinction between managing and supervising. And so we want all of our command staff to manage. Policing in America has traditionally been reactive. The acquisition of data and use of intelligence allows us to be proactive. Crime prevention supersedes crime apprehension because if we wait until to report a crime or to apprehend an offender, the crime has already occurred and we've created victims. One of the more outstanding aspects of the data was the understanding of discretionary time and unallocated time. Discretionary time cannot be understated because that's the opportunity for management to direct what we do and how we do it and how we stop crime. Managers should be the determiners on how that time is spent. If it's predictable, then it's preventable. Data, whether it's call data, crime data, event data, creates or identifies the patterns that are predictable. That's why data is important. The manager examines that data and then assigns duties that allow us to prevent the predictable events. So let me restate that. If it's preventable, if it's predictable, it's preventable. The data allows for the predictability. Managers allocating resources correctly allows for the preventability. So that's why it's so critical. As a result, the Darien Police Department is able to prevent some crimes, preempt crimes, and displace still others. The data will also assist us in solving crimes. We've seen how the data works. We knew that we started the top 20 offenders. We knew that their behavior would be predictable, so we began to allocate resources to prevent them from offending. It worked well with burglary to motor vehicle intervention. We knew that we were going to have a certain number of motor vehicle break-ins, and so we started to work with making sure that they couldn't do it. And so if it's predictable, it's preventable, and we've proven that with the effort of the officers and the command staff and following up on it. Upon becoming an intelligence-led police department, the first thing that we need is somebody to turn that raw data into actionable intelligence. That becomes our crime analyst. She makes the data relevant, fulfills requests from the command staff and others, coordinates with other agencies, identifies emerging crime trends and patterns, disseminates intelligence from other agencies, and assists detectives. Additionally, and most recently, Independently, the crime analysts looked at two specific crime patterns, one having to do with thefts at Hinsdale South and the other having to do with retail thefts. Today, we hosted a retail theft seminar. Last month, we hosted a schools meeting and talked extensively about how to mitigate the thefts at Hinsdale South. We've come up with some strategies that we're going to implement for the coming year as we go back to school in September. And we talked extensively to the folks who did come out today at the retail theft seminar about how to manage more efficiently. That we came up with some suggestions on our side, and they came up with some suggestions on their side. And so ultimately what we hope to do is expand on what we did today and include everybody. We plan on hosting our next seminar in September, and we've had that was not done independently. We had the assistance of the chamber. Claire at the chamber helped us send out the invites and will help us stump the message as we move forward. Darien crime tables, as you can see that the crimes that we looked at, we did not include homicide because it's a negligible number. I think we've had one. The interesting factor about the homicides is that the three that we've had since during my tenure all were domestic homicides. The Kramer homicide was essentially a domestic homicide. So we have one of the goals that's being set now that city administrator and I've talked about is how to more effectively look at domestic violence. It's the one area that we continue to see an escalation in calls, and it's an area that carries one of the most dangers. What we do see when we look at the crime table of recorded incidents is we see about a 22.6% decline in crime over the past year. So we're headed in the right direction. It's not a success story yet, but we are in fact headed in the right direction. And we base that on 584 criminal events in 2012 and 452 criminal events reported. And this isn't data that can be fudged or anything else. This is a count on the actual reports taken. So we're pleased about that, but we still have a ways to go yet because 0 is the magic number. So. Of course, after crimes are reported, we need somebody to investigate them, and that's the investigations department. And so as we did everything else in the department, we looked at everything that the detectives do. We evaluated caseloads, evaluated clearance rates, time from report to assignment to a detective. That's been one area that's been proven to have a direct correlation to the solvability of a case, how long a case sits before it's assigned. Evaluate the time for the investigation. You don't want cases sitting too long because it just means that you got the detectives having to look at cases that have no possibility of being solved, or either at the crime lab. We evaluated the evidence room. We evaluated the allocation of detective personnel. When we started this process, all the detectives worked on the same shift, and so we made some changes in that area as well. The other philosophical change that goes along with this is case reports. They must be complete and contemporaneous to the event. The case report narrative must match the elements of the offense described. Those things lead to solvability. The more complete the case report, the greater its chance to apprehend an offender. The time from report to delivery into a detective's hands has been shown to have a direct correlation to solvability. Solvability increases clearance rates. Clearance rates take offenders off the street and prevent them from reoffending, and the best way to stop a crime pattern is to catch the offender. And so that's why those things are important. Just to clarify, a clearance rate is the number of cases a detective receives and the number of cases that contrasted to the number of cases that he solves by arrest or clearance. Any questions thus far? So what we did after we looked at the detectives, we reduced the number of detectives in the unit, adjusted the hours and starting times, changed the way the cases were closed and classified, hired a part-time property clerk without increasing the police budget. By the way, I didn't mention it, we hired the criminal analyst also without increasing the police budget. Requested the budget to redesign the property room, including state-of-the-art barcoding and RFID tracking, implemented the use of gunshot residue testing, placed an officer on a federal task force, and up to this point, the task force officer has been responsible, and we've actually received about $110,000 in government awards. So we have that currently. Technology and accountability are the next areas that we want to look at. Now, I grouped these two together because some of the liability has a technological component. All of it doesn't. So as we get to it, if there are any questions about it. One of the first areas we looked at was the range. We changed the range qualification course from a 50-round to a 30-round course. The 30-round course is a state certified course. That's the one that the state police use, the Chicago police use, and we found it to be more efficient. There was no reason to shoot that many rounds. In the first place, one of the things that we all understand in law enforcement, that target shooting makes you a marksman. Survivability in a officer-involved shooting requires gunfighting and gladiator skills. And so what we want to do is train as closely as possible to what we can do to replicate the scenarios of a shooting without placing officers in danger. We still have some changing yet to do, because we're going to be looking at simunitions, which actually allows us to shoot our officers without danger of them being seriously injured. But it's a wake-up call, and it lets officers function in more realistic. So we're going to be adding all of those components to the firearms range training. We eliminated the practice of an officer being returned to the street after failing to qualify, and that was a serious liability issue. If an officer has failed to qualify, make basic qualification, and then is returned to a street, that's a bad scenario for the city, the police department, and that officer. Created a protocol to conduct ammunition inventories after each shoot, thereby making our assessment of how much ammunition we need much more reliable. Requested the purchase of a firearm simulator, which some of the council members have actually seen in operation, and eliminated 2 live fire practice shoots and replaced that with judgment training on the simulator. We've acquired a new crime mapping instrument, Crime Reports Public Engines. It's currently being uploaded with 2 years of data. There's some interesting components to it. It'll increase our crime mapping, crime analyst capability, but it'll also allow citizens to draw circles close to their residence and be given notifications via email whenever there's an incident that occurs in close proximity to their homes. We believe this will go a long way in terms of enhancing communication. Communication with citizenry empowers them, and it becomes a force multiplier for all of our safety. The other area of vulnerability is a complaint and disciplinary process. One of the things that most studies, whether it was the Booz Allen Hamilton study or the Rampart study, all have shown that failing to have a complaint and disciplinary process that makes sense and an early warning system are all precursors to the potential for corruption in the police department, or the potential for the police department winding up under a federal consent decree. Federal consent decrees are extremely economic drain on a city, because they require monitors and what have you, and those aren't included in the budget. And so you wind up hiring 3 or 4 people to monitor compliance that weren't budgeted for, and so it's a huge drain. And so we looked at that. So we established a procedure where every citizen complaint is documented and cataloged. We established a different investigative protocol. We acquired a subscription-based tracking model called Guardian Tracking, and it's up and live. The police committee witnessed a demonstration of it tonight. Has a lot of merit as an early warning system, as well as it has some immediate return and gratification to the officer, because every time an entry is made, an officer is sent an email to the work email system, so he or she knows who made the entry and what that entry consists of. Also, at certain levels, it allows the officer to make entries, both complimentary and questioning the entry that may have been made about them. And it just bodes well for us all. If there are limitations on what the officers can input or can extract, there are 3 levels of administration, but we think it bodes well for our ability to create a performance evaluation system. We anticipate that by December we will complete our first full-blown performance evaluation. This will be a key component to our success with that. We have fully operational in-car cameras. We've streamlined the crash review process, and we've assigned culpability or lack thereof. Each traffic crash involving a department vehicle is now being adjudged either preventable, non-preventable, and there's culpability being assigned. Not that that wasn't being done before, but we've streamlined that process. We've examined fatigue as it relates to car crashes and everything else. Changed the badge placement policy. Our current badge placement policy requires officers to carry our badge on our duty belt, on our belts. The new badge placement policy will require the officer to carry it on a lanyard at center mass. And we do that because most police personnel are trained to aim at center mass, and so if there's a chance to be injured by friendly fire, it's increased exponentially if your badge is on your belt. And so those are the kind of things that we're looking at. We also recently began, as a liability issue, we began rejecting solicitor applications that we couldn't fully vet. And so I work closely with Sergeant Charay in the Detective Division, and we make sure that if we can't confirm, we reject the application. Everything on the application, if we can't confirm it, we reject it. In addition to that, we're looking at some things with the concealed carry, because as you know, I'm going to pass these around just so you can take a look at them. As you know, prior to the concealed carry law in Illinois, most folks were either recreational users or hunters or what have you, and so you keep your weapons locked up. Well, now with the concealed carry, people will actually be carrying weapons and may not secure them as much, and so people need to know. And so we as the first step in proactive policing, we went out and we grabbed these coloring books so that our community engagement officers can distribute them to kids so that they know how to respond, how to act should they come across a gun. And there's some interesting things that parents can do too. When you let your kids go to the neighbor's house, you should want to know. You want to know if there's a dog present. You should want to know if there's a gun in the home, and what are the parents doing to secure the gun. And so we have to be mindful that the likelihood of a child being hurt is greater. We're also looking at the possibility of acquiring some gun locks so folks can lock those guns up when they're not in use. The ultimate goal of our community engagement effort is to convert our current police service delivery model into one of community policing. So in order to make that conversion, we need the use of data and decision making. We need to redefine the definition of a well-rounded police officer. And what that means is that every police officer in the city of Darien must be a community engagement officer. Each and every one of us must feel comfortable to get out of the car, walk up to neighbors, greet neighbors, speak to neighbors, and actively engage neighbors. We no longer have the luxury of being able to sit in a squad car with the windows rolled up and the air conditioner on and drive by and wave at people. We have to engage the community, number one, because the community deserves to be engaged, the community deserves to be informed, and it adds value to our positions as police officers in the community. Redefine the relationship between the citizens and the community, and then in doing so, we ultimately redefine the public's expectation of the police. And so what we want to do is have the public expect us to be engaged, and once that happens, then we'll have a full-blown partnership. Toward those ends, we've transitioned from a single point of contact to multiple points of contact. We have quarterly property managers and meetings with property managers and owners. We have a theft protection seminars. This is our second theft protection seminar. We've trained elderly services officers. We have speaking engagements for homeowners associations. We've started to establish citizen-based subcommittees. We've also enhanced the auxiliary police function. And one of the things, the components of that enhanced function is each auxiliary officer will be assigned to a sergeant. So the goal here is to eliminate some of the administrative functions that the sergeants are required to handle. And so each auxiliary may at some point be tasked with doing sergeant's duties that would normally be relegated to administrative duties for a sergeant. So we're really pleased about that. In the future, we'd like to host community meetings based on beats so that and engage the community in problem solving for both police officers and the citizens. This table kind of looks at some of the changes. School visitation, that was done under the old and the new system. Top 20 offenders, that's new. Fireworks flyers, new. Burglary door hangers, that's new. Burglary to motor vehicle hangers, that's new. The Darien Community Park Initiative, new. Retail theft seminars, new. Crime analysis, new. Elderly services, new. The graffiti initiative. The graffiti initiative is not exclusively a police department initiative. It's done in tandem with Dan Gombach's shop. Whenever there's graffiti, the police department goes out, takes a report, documents it on film, and Dan Gombach's crew is out to get rid of it as soon as it's done. And it's a strategy that works quite well, because even if it's not gang-related graffiti, it prevents people from claiming property that they didn't pay rent for. So It's a good practice, and it keeps gangbangers from claiming property that they will later identify as their turf. And so it's worked well up to this point. We want to be mindful of continuing to work. So I appreciate Dan's input, and I think it's a good collaborative team effort between the municipal services and the police department. The last
Chief-
three slides just
Chief, I'm
pretty
sorry.
much.
I have
Yes,
a question on that table. You went over the graffiti initiative. What's the email initiative that involves the schools?
What we did is, I'm sorry, we last month, we had a meeting with the schools, and that meeting was essentially to update us on the status of DARE. But one of our overarching goals for the coming years is to make sure that we have a more efficient way of getting information out in a timely manner. Right now, we use Direct Connect, and we use some other venues, but it's not nearly as effective. And what we learned is that each of the school districts has an email blast consisting of their entire student base at the time. And so they agreed that they would allow us either access directly to that so that we could send them information and they would send it out with their email blast, or they would assist us in signing up the folks on their email blast to be a part of the police department email blast. And so that holds some promise. We're still working out the details of that. And we think that'll be a far more efficient way of getting mass information out in the case that we need to do so. The McDonald's collaboration we talked about, our video surveillance registry, I think we have about 7 or 8 residents and businesses signed up, and we're looking to enhance that. Certainly elderly services officers and the regular property managers meetings. In the last 3 slides, pretty much 2012, it shows person-to-person crimes. We broke the crimes down. This is arrest activity only. And we broke the crimes down in person-to-person crimes, property crimes, substance abuse, and that's alcohol and drugs, and then traffic, and then administrative, that's municipal ordinances or warrants. And so you can see that the lion's share of our activity, arrest activity, involved traffic in 2012. As it does to a lesser degree in 2013. And here again, some of that goes to the command staff's ability to manage discretionary time. So instead of as much traffic, as important as traffic may be in certain areas, there were obviously other areas, because we have 174 person-to-person crimes arrests, and that's not property crime. That's where a person interacted with another person, either from theft or robbery, or battery, or something of that nature. And so that goes to show you how important managing and allocating discretionary time and unallocated time actually is. And then we see the trend that as it continues in 2014, this data is valid through April the 30th of this year. And so if you multiply the numbers there by 3, we should be somewhere close by to where we are. That concludes my 2-year report. It followed along with the written report you have. If there are any questions, I apologize again for the failure of editorial content and catching the mislabeling of the tables. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question on the beats and the statistics that you have per beat, and then also that slide that showed that there's going to be some potential community events hosted around a specific area for a beat. If a resident were to want to know what beat they're in, where would they go look?
Actually, right now we can call, as soon as our crime mapping system is up, the beats will be outlined on the crime map, so they'll be able to see it on the crime map.
Chief, the one thing, and it wasn't on your slides, but was in our report tonight, is that the schools have indicated that they only want your officers in the schools a maximum of twice a week, I believe, because the students are asking too many questions of the teachers, is what I read today, and I had a hard time with that, thinking that they're going to stop you from coming to school doing a good service because the kids are afraid they're going to ask the teachers too many questions.
Actually, more succinctly, they don't want their educational process disrupted, because when the cop walks in with a gun, it's either excitement, concern, and it kind of disrupts the academic process. So basically what we're looking for is how to be more engaged at a less disruptive level.
At the beginning, I can see, because obviously it's going to happen, but don't you think that if you were going in more times, so if those kids see the officers 5, 6 times, I'm not just using a number, that they're going to get used to it, and those questions are going to come down, and we're gonna have a more of a police presence, and we're not gonna have and I don't wanna use the word Sandy Hook, but that's what comes to my mind.
Well, I think that what the key to it, Alderman, is to do it as least as obtrusive as possible and kind of flow within the system of the school. So one of the purposes of that meeting was to see what else we could offer the schools so that we could be there in a less obtrusive fashion. That's what I'm trying to say. And so ultimately what we hope to do is figure out other ways to get into the school so that we're not just coming in making warm fuzzies and chit-chatting with the kids and chit-chatting with the teachers, sitting in the lunchroom. That's kind of what we do now, and get to know the kids that way. So ultimately what we'd like to do is some more different kinds of interfaces with them so that we can, so that it does become less obtrusive and less of a disruption and more of an ingrained part of what they're already doing.
Okay, thank you.
And we kind of have to gear it. It's like going into a hospital. We kind of, the hospital administrator is the boss there, and so we can't go into a hospital and just because we'd like to be there. And so it's kind of the same with the school. So
No, I understand, but I think there's a point of having to, sell the benefit of those questions being asked in the.
Sure.
So
sure.
that's where I'm going with that.
We're going to be establishing some new relationships. There's a new principal at Hinsdale South. Mr. Fitzgerald is leaving Eisenhower Junior High, and so we'll be establishing some new relationships, and hopefully we can build on the success we had with Mr. Fitzgerald and Mr. Waterman and some of the other places, and kind of get in where we really like to be. Yes, ma'am.
Also, can I ask how often, if at all, the dogs visit the schools?
That's a little bit more touchy because those dogs are trained, so we don't have a set protocol for the dog to visit the schools. We try to keep that to specific requests for a visit because that's probably even more disruptive than.
Yeah.
than
Yeah,
the
I
stop
didn't know
coming.
if there was
Yeah.
a time when
School-
they
the-
can
the
go in where
school's
they're
pretty
not.
much-
Alderman,
Accept those.
you're referring to a social visit, not a narcotics visit, because some dogs go into the schools, you're not talking about a dog search.
Yes,
Just
I
a
am.
general visit?
Nope, a search.
A search?
A
No.
sniff search.
Oh.
That's up to this point. I think we've done it once at Hinsdale South, but that's something that we have to collaborate with the school because the lockers are the school's property, not our property. So the student has an expectation to privacy from us, not the school. The schools can certainly search their lockers. So that's something that we have to collaborate with the schools on. So in any circumstance where a citizen of the U.S. has an expectation of privacy, that privacy is protected by the Constitution, and so we couldn't do a sniff search without specific collaboration and almost direction from the school. Unless we had some specific knowledge, hey, a kid ran into the school with a gun, and he
Right.
never left the first floor, and we think it's in one of the lockers on the first floor, something like that, or hey, a guy dropped a pound bag of marijuana outside of one locker, and we think there's some more in there, then that's different. But just for random certain, no, we couldn't, not without some collaboration and some assistance from the school, or request from the school.
Chief, this is the first year that we really have done this type of engagement with the schools, and I expect that as the process goes along through the years, that there will be a change, and you'll probably become more, and be invited in more often.
Yes, ma'am. We expect
than
it to be more
you are now.
evolving and growing. That's what we'd like to see anyway. And that's the reason why we pushed the meeting. We called the meeting from the PD side. We chaired it, and everybody showed up. And so we had a pretty good turnout in terms of.
That's good that everybody did
yes.
show up. That's very good, yeah.
For the schools?
Yeah.
Yes.
What are the districts? How many? Which one
3.
showed up?
66, 61, and 63.
Okay. What about
66. I'm sorry,
Hinsdale-
66.
Hinsdale South?
Yes, Mr. Waterman and Ms. Palmer were both there, the new principal.
So what's that district number?
86.
86.
So that's
Four.
that's 4 districts, okay.
How about any communications, exchanges with Our Lady of Peace? Are they still?
Yes, they're still in the
still?
loop. They're
Oh,
they're
okay.
still in the loop. She missed that meeting, but they're still in the loop. And also Kinswood.
that's right, yeah.
They're also in the loop as well. So.
Okay. Alderman McGivern?
I had a question about some of the, like, for instance, the emergency preparedness. How often is that training conducted with the four, are we involved in all four school districts?
Yes. One of the things that is in the monthly report, it's not included in the 2-year report. Jerry Pickley has made sure that all the schools have met their requirement for lockdown procedures for this year. So we've been doing that. Some of it we've done it at the district level, and some of it we've done with individual schools.
How about with the Park District? We've got the Sportsplex and the Community Center.
We haven't done that because they don't have a specific lot. We've done it with the community center over on Manning, but we haven't done it with the Sportsplex.
And then, kind of I think you touched on the replacement to the DARE program. How often are we engaging the school districts with respect to, the heroin epidemic, that's, or drug?
The drug curriculum is all ingrained into their regular day-to-day curriculum. So the health department, their health instructors are handling that right now.
Yeah.
Some of the school districts are, or some of the individual schools are working also with the Robert Crown Center.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest components, that the health teachers were going to be taking over this major subject matter.
And not only that it was going to be ingrained into their existing curriculum, so that it was an ongoing learning process instead of just a once
Yes,
or
that's
6
what
week.
yeah. Any other questions for the chief?
Just one, probably more for Alderman MacGyver. She's been the chair of the police committee, I think, since it was established maybe 6 years ago. And I know one of the things that was difficult 6 years ago, and it's not difficult now, is when the committee is asked to make recommendations on a variety of things, you have much more information, I think, to make a basis. And I think the department has come a long way in being able to provide that information, so the elected officials really have something tangible to help them make the decisions. So I was just looking maybe for your observation.
Yeah, I mean, an example of really something that's changed. I mean, I think when we were looking at the enforcement of overweight vehicles and trucks, that was considered, I don't know how, when, under the previous administration, as a revenue generator. And now the chief is saying it's really not, that we should be allocating those resources somewhere else. I mean, if you recall, when we purchased the
Yep.
scales, it was because they were gonna pay for themselves, and I think they did initially, but now the ongoing, I think, maintenance of that equipment and so forth. So that's kind of a paradigm shift. I would say that, I mean, we have so much data now, that it is, I mean, we listened to the 2-year report. I guess I'm looking for feedback from the council. I mean, some members have been here for that full 6 years. Is this valuable information? Do you see the change in, how the allocation of resources is impacting efficiency? Looking for kind of feedback from the council now that you've heard the 2-year report.
Well, what I think is great about the information is that, sitting here for just a year, that you're able to take that information that's given and come up with your own opinions and your own ideologies of your experience from the past year, plus now taking a report, and now that I'm a little bit more seasoned, I'm knowing a little bit more what's going on. I think the more information you have, the better decisions I can help make and, help create policy. So I think it was, it was really, really good.
I see a lot more transparency is what I see. And it was always kind of that building over there. I mean, until we got involved and saw even, the evidence room, the state of that, it was kind of shocking to me. So I think that there's a lot more transparency, and it's difficult. I mean, change is difficult, and I commend the officers who have kind of taken a leadership role to embrace the change. It's hard, but I think I've seen a tremendous amount of, we didn't have any information. That was very frustrating, to sit in, meeting after meeting of the original, when we started the police committee, to have nothing to talk about because we had no information at all. To start, it was like, really, it was just, it was reinventing this whole, we didn't have any of this data. Obviously, you see it's only about 2 or 3 years worth of information that we have. So I commend the chief and his staff and the officers that have helped kind of, move us, I think, in the right direction.
Now, I marvel at the list of things that you've done, the new things that you have brought to the department since you've come on board. And I commend our sergeants for really stepping up and becoming the managers that you have envisioned. I know that many of them are just really, just really on top of what they're doing.
One of the things I want to close with is that all the bright ideas don't mean squat if the troops don't embrace them. And I give all the kudos to the officers who looked at this and said, this new chief is kind of wacky, but I'm a professional police officer and I'm going to do what's expected of me. And those are the guys with boots on the ground, both the sergeants and the cops. That John and I can come up with all sorts of great strategies that wouldn't have much merit if you didn't have professional police officers who are willing to embrace them. So the kudos go out to those cops who are the real police.
Yeah, exactly. Alderman Belke?
I'll just add that, all this information is very helpful. It's good information to mull over. I like the community alerts. I think I like the way it's like a neighborhood watch program where, I'm getting emails more proactively of what's going on and what I should be looking out for. And then, you're asking us, I think on at least one occasion, to send information out to all our constituents, for just helpful hints or what have you. So I like that part. I think that's, helping me look out for the neighbors.
And we're still looking at what data is most important. Understand that all of the data that you guys see is important to us as managers. It may not be important or even meaningful to you guys at some level. And so we're looking for as much input as possible as what you guys want to see and what you don't want to see, so that we can tailor our reports each month to something that's palatable and digestible and something that you really want. So if there's something, if the data gets to be overwhelming, we need it, and we're going to continue to use it internally. And whatever you guys want to see in terms of our monthly reports is what's important, because it's far more important that you read the report and have some understanding and really care about it than just tossing a bunch of numbers at you. So we produce the numbers because we need them.
Well, residents routinely ask me, what types of crimes are happening in Darien, and, they always marvel at, which crimes rise to the highest level. They've never expected domestic violence to be at the level that it is in the city of Darien. And we didn't know that before, which is what Alderman McIver was talking about.
I think one of the things that I've seen is that, I think it's all the departments, the communication by the city to the residents with like the Darien, the Direct Connect. And that includes Dan's department, the city, the city itself, the police department. I think all that is very valuable. I think ultimately you need the data in order to allocate your resources. Ultimately, the goal is to make Darien a very safe and as crime-free as possible place to live. And I think that's mostly what residents are looking for. They're not looking at necessarily how many arrests. They just want to feel that, their homes are safe, the streets are safe, their children are safe, the schools are safe, the parks are safe, so things like that. And if all that data then translates to, that's the outcome, and it's because you can move people around and resources in order to focus on that. I think ultimately that's the goal.
Ryan, I think you had something? Yeah.
Just in talking about what reports we give to the council and to the residents, we've struggled with that for a while because they could be long. We wanted some narrative. So I think the monthly reports now have taken on kind of a style that's more friendly to the reader, to the resident. And it's come from when the chief started, there was a tremendous amount of time spent on educating all of us on how you staff based on statistics and information. And I think as a philosophy, that's almost behind everybody. Your example, Chief, that you use, and I always ask you to use, but the emergency room at a hospital, they staff differently on maybe a Tuesday night than a Friday night, and that concept's no different. But I think, again, for the council, you're past some of those concepts you were trying to, bring forward a couple of years ago, and we are down to more of the report you have now. So I think that some of the things, Alderman, you're mentioning, hopefully are behind us. We don't have to now talk every month about how we allocate resources, because we're past that. So I think hopefully the report is is now in a better format.
Alderman Marquez?
You know, I saw Officer Schrey outside of the city council, and he was asking me my feedback on the numbers. And what I told him was, sometimes the percentages, if a person's watching, they get thrown off. If you had 5 person-to-person crimes, and you now have 15, I think last month you said, well, it rose 300%, you know, and somebody here is 300%, that's a big number. But if you say it went from 5 to 15, that's not that sounds better. And I would rather get the actual numbers. This report had the numbers. So I think that's critical. If you want to know how I want to hear that data, I don't want to hear percentage increases. I want to see the numbers. If it was this in May last year, if it was this number, and this month it's this number, that's what I want to see. I can figure out the increase myself. I don't want to hear the percentages, because I think that throws John Q. Public off when they hear percentages and they don't see the actual numbers. Because I bet people tell me that, oh my God, 300% increase. Well, 5 to 15 or what, you know. The other thing is, and I mentioned this to Greg as well, when I was a dean of students, we were very key about dealing with gangs in the high school district. We had 6 high schools. And the Board of Education didn't want us to talk about it, because they were afraid if we talked about it, it would mean we had an issue. And unfortunately, when you don't talk about it and you don't plan to deal with it, you become reactive rather than proactive. And we live in a community where sometimes people, you wonder, does it scare people to hear that we have certain types of events occurring within Darien? And I think it's critical that they do understand that we have certain events happening within the city of Darien, because we just don't have, we're not just saying we have the events, but we're now saying this is how we're dealing with those events. If it's predictable, we can deal with it. You know, if we have crime in the park, we deal with that by having an officer in the park. So I like the fact that we talk about it. You know, the human trafficking, the epidemic of drugs, the heroin, as Alderman MacGyver mentioned, that's scary stuff to the public. They hear that and they think, oh my God, I thought we lived in a nice community. Fact of the matter is, they need to understand that those issues really are out there, and that we have a police department that's aware of it, and a police department that's willing to deal with it. So I applaud you on that. This is a lot of data to consume tonight. I'll go home and I'll read it. I'll read it again. But I applaud you on the amount of information you are giving out. As Alderman MacGyver said, it's much easier to sit back now and say, these are our needs, and this is how we meet those needs because of the data. I'm a data-driven person as well. I'm very much interested in seeing, I stepped in and watched your Guardian presentation, and I'm very interested in how that's going to translate into a performance-based evaluation, because I think officers need to have evaluation that shows, that promotes their formative growth. So I hope you really are able to utilize that data to do that. So I commend you on that. It was lengthy, but it was a necessary report for us to see.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Chief, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
As you can see, the chief had on the May 2014 report also, but I think he's going to pass on that and take questions if anybody has it, if that's fine.
Yes, did anybody want to address the monthly report? If not, if you do have more questions after you've read through it, please contact the chief. Thank you, Chief. Did you want these coloring books back again? Yeah.
Crayons.
Thank you.
I have grandchildren, but I don't know if any of their friends' parents have guns in their house. Yeah, that's you never think about that.
Attached in your agenda packet for this meeting, we had our survey results for the website redesign. At the goal-setting meeting last year, we determined that one of the big projects we wanted to take on this summer was redesigning our website, making it more user-friendly and seeing what residents wanted to see. We recently went out and surveyed 83 residents who were able to provide some good feedback, and these are the results. We were able to get out of these 83 residents a large number of residents who would visit the website several times per month or more. So these are people that are getting our Direct Connect emails. These are people that are regularly visiting our website. So we think we got a pretty good cross-section. Overall, this group gave us an average of 3.11 out of 5, which is listed as good, but it certainly leaves room for improvement also. Overall, the gradings for the visual appeal of the website, navigation, searching the site, and understanding the links, they were all right around that 3 out of 5 range. So that tells us that really we need to do a broad redesign of the website, not just focus on the aesthetics or focus on any one individual piece. We also wanted to see how residents are currently getting their information, not only from our website, but from other sources. We had a large number of residents that use Facebook, use Twitter, use LinkedIn, use a lot of social networking and a lot of different media sites. When we compared that with the number of people that use our information, we found that nearly everyone uses Direct Connect, which it's slightly skewed because this is how we advertise the survey also, so you're going to get more people that use the Direct Connect website. But especially if you look at the Darien Facebook page, you can see the difference between the number of people that use Facebook themselves and use the Darien Facebook page. So it shows really opportunities that we can find moving forward. We also found that more and more residents are using apps on their phones and on their tablets. So that's another area that we can look at when we're redesigning the website. So the next step in the process, we've received a few proposals back from different companies that redesign websites. We're specifically looking for groups that have municipal experience, so they're familiar with meetings and really engaging the public so we can do a better job of that. So the plan is to bring that to the Admin Finance Committee at the next meeting. But we also wanted to ask any additional feedback. We ended up surveying elected officials. We got a number of surveys back and responses on that. So we think we have some good feedback as we move forward in this project.
It appears that the two vehicles which they use the most, the Neighbors and the Darien Direct Connect. Now, the Direct Connect comes out, what is it, Brian,
Every Friday.
Every Friday.
That, I mean, that's a good thing because, I mean, you know, that's more up to date. The Neighbors is how many times a year? 4 or 5 times?
Every
6
2
times,
months, every
yeah.
2 months, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'm a little bit more concerned that, you know, while the Neighbors is an excellent vehicle, it's, you know, it's presenting data that sometimes does not give people a chance to respond to something. I mean, you put the brush pickup in there, and that's great, but then, you know, how often, when do people get that issue that shows that? I mean, I know we had the dates on the Direct Connect, but I'm going to go back to these people who didn't know that it wasn't their week for the brush pickup. I'd like to see more people using the Darien Facebook page. When you look at the number of people that are using Facebook and the number of people that go to the Darien Facebook page, it kind of is a little disappointing because that's something that so many people use. I'm just wondering if we could address that. I know you're talking about website design for our web page, but is there something can we get some help in terms of social media with regard to how to get people to utilize the Darien Facebook page?
Mm-hmm. I think you're absolutely correct, and that's something that we need to push both our resident subscriptions for, that Facebook as well as Twitter, which we're now utilizing as of the last couple of weeks. Where this really affects our website design is there are ways that our website really can push that. The biggest one is when you go to some web pages now, you see little boxes in the corner of the screen that have a Facebook icon
Twitter.
or a Twitter icon,
Right.
and residents can immediately share that on their Facebook profile just by clicking on that box. Now, if we see that the Chamber of Commerce posts something, and then we can share that, and then they can go to our website and show events that we might have. If they were going to show brush pickup, they could immediately go to our website page and share that, and that ends up hitting the news feed of all their neighbors.
Correct.
So some of those things are definitely opportunities, and we'll have some of our consultants come in and recommend.
Have you
it.
seen these companies that you're looking at, you say have municipal experience? Have you looked at any of the designs that they've worked on for other municipalities?
Yes, both of the companies that, we've gotten proposals from 4 different companies. Really, 2 of them have dozens or hundreds of municipalities each. So both companies really focus on municipal governments, and they're really the 2 that we see most frequently.
Okay.
So they'll have that, and they have some pretty cool and interesting ideas. But it is kind of important to focus really on that municipal experience rather than have just some basic web designer out there.
Right.
Scott, have you given any thought to using something of, like there's companies out there that will provide shortened news flashes, like on a daily basis, like a constant contact kind of thing. I mean, to me, a lot of times less is more, and I think Direct Connect is great. It's fabulous. I look at it all the time, but it is a lot of information. So maybe sometimes having like integrated Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and even maybe our webpage with some sort of blog on it to give just one or 2 pieces of information per day or every other day. I'm thinking there might be some value to that. I don't know if you guys looked at that at all.
Absolutely. We've discussed really the best way with Direct Connect also. And with Direct Connectors, we've tried to have a little bit of a balance between sending something out every day so people get used to deleting that because it might contain a lot of information that they're not used to on a daily basis. But I think you're absolutely correct. You can hit people in a variety of ways. And as we go through the design and through this, it's a good time to talk about that also, how we send out Direct Connect. Do we want to send it out Monday, Wednesday, Friday with it broken up into 3 pieces so it hits people a little differently? It's
I don't know if I'm looking for something, if you give me one news bit that brush pickup is this week, I'm going to remember it. But if I'm looking at a 3-page email with everything going on in the city, I'm probably not going to remember it.
I'm not going to scroll down to find the
I'm not
brush
gonna scroll
pickup
down,
dates,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, that certainly happens. The one other item that you bring it up that I think is a good point, looking at the number of people that also hit the patch, and there can be some articles on there that can be good if they're doing an article on brush pickup. It's good for us to be able to get that information out to them immediately too, because they can hit it.
It seems
that
like
way
the patch though has gone more, because I'm on a couple different patches, and they'll all post exactly the same stories, period. I almost find better news with some of the other local online newspapers than I do the patch nowadays.
There was definitely more focus when Lauren Williamson was there.
Yeah, now it's kind of
Yeah.
uniform, so.
What's our ability to possibly use video? Because video is such a powerful, component with social media and out there. And it's no secret that, Google bought YouTube, so.
We absolutely can. YouTube, I'm a big fan of YouTube. Ever since we started using YouTube, we've been able to reduce our costs significantly because rather than using other subscription sites, YouTube is free. And you can put anything on there. You can, with some of the software that we have currently, we can modify some of our videos. So we do the best that we can on those. One example is the Coyote educational video that we were able to get a snippet of that from a previous council meeting, but we certainly do have those capabilities, and it's free with YouTube. So whatever we would want to do, we can really post that stuff immediately also. That's how we're even running our city council meetings right now, is this is going to go onto our YouTube channel. Now, our YouTube channel has been a little less popular, especially as you see some of the different city council meetings. Sometimes you'll have only 3 or 4 people that'll watch those, whereas other times when you have hotter topics on, you could have hundreds of people watching them. We had a meeting last July that we ended up with hundreds of people because of the topic, but usually we'll only have 3, 4, 5, and I know we usually look at a couple, so we might not be hitting the outside as much.
I usually go to it when I go through the minutes. I said, what? And I can go back and look, so.
Scott, I think one of the things that's challenging, and we've talked about this before, is trying to reach out to the public, but we're reaching out to maybe people in their 70s, their 60s, their 50s, all the way down to high school. And what would work for one segment may not work for the others. Because to sit here and expect, a high school student or a young college student to go and watch our city council meetings is probably not realistic. But if there are things that we can make interesting, that's something we have to try to work in, because storm sewers are only so much fun to talk about. But there are other things that we do that I think we can reach out. Just an example that came to mind. There's others, Dan.
Range Dan's.
Good morning.
But that's something we have to keep in mind. Is there a way, to get to get younger younger people involved in city government and reach out to them.
Yeah, and that's something that we look at quite a bit. The Facebook demographic is actually getting much older.
Yep.
That used to be, remember the years when that was really for college kids only, and that's gotten quite a bit older. Now Twitter tends to get the younger generation.
Mhm.
That's what we're
Yeah, they're
we're
moving
trying to
away
hit a
from
little more,
Facebook, yeah.
But it's really our effort right now is focused at getting as much information out there in as many different mediums as possible to try to hit everybody in every way possible, and and hopefully we hit
Yeah, right
some
now, we're still
targets there.
focused on really what is the business of the city? When is brush pick? When are these things? But, as we get more things like the Park District concerts and the, free concerts in the park and the things the Chamber's doing, maybe that will reach over different age groups.
Any other questions?
Do we have the demographics of who participated in the survey?
We didn't ask for ages. We did ask people, with government surveys, sometimes we are careful about requiring, within our surveys, we can require names, addresses, ages. With something like this, people tend to participate a little less, so we made all information voluntary, and some people left addresses, some people left names, some people left some very good suggestions also, but we don't have the age of participation.
Do we have, how current are our demographics? Especially on age groups, I'm just curious.
City of Darien overall?
Yes.
We get that information frequently with the census, every 10 years with the census. So
Okay.
we have 2010, even special census projects, even if we wanted to get that now, would only have a very small portion of the city. So really, we're looking at about 4-year-old data on that.
Really? Okay. I'd be anxious to see what our senior citizenry amounts to. I just had the pleasure of meeting a Darien resident who wants to focus on programs for senior citizens within the Park District. So I was just curious as to what kind of base we have.
Yeah, we certainly could get that information out to the council again. We reviewed that back right when the census first came out, but it's been several years for that
Okay.
since then.
Scott, question for you. Have we ever gone back to our cable providers and seen what kind of information that we can get on demand? I know, like, for Comcast, I can go on demand, they have special sales on different things and so forth, cars and whatever. Do we have that access to that information that we could provide for the city? Just, I'm thinking more ways to get more people involved, because you get younger generations like, kids that are on the computers. As you get to the older generations, they might not want to go on the computers and they just want to stay with TV and so forth, so.
So Comcast and AT&T are both required to provide government and educational access to us, which we get one channel. The way that they send that out, they do that the same for every municipality. So as municipalities have requested individual items, they've not done that. And each provider does it a little differently. Comcast has Channel 6, which some of you may be familiar with. AT&T actually has an overall on-demand channel that you go to on demand, and it'll show, you would be able to access the city of Darien, Oak Brook, Hinsdale. You'd be able to see any area within the region, but anything specifically with videos or those types of things, they wouldn't provide for us.
We should develop a City of Darien app for your phone.
That's those are out there, and that's something that we can certainly talk about with the website redesign. Those are all good thoughts and goals going into the project.
So, Scott, you're bringing this forward to the Administrative Finance Committee for?
Correct.
Okay.
We're bringing it to the admin finance for just overall discussion of the companies, and then to begin the design process, what direction we want to
Okay.
move.
But Scott, also, as you started out with, you are looking for feedback from the aldermen.
Sure.
We don't need that tonight. If anybody has additional comments or suggestions, just email those to you so we can keep those all together.
All righty, thanks,
Thank you.
Scott. Let's move on to the treasurer's report.
Wait,
Oh, I'm
Dan-
sorry.
Dan just got up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Dan's got his 4-year report. Everybody get comfortable.
We're gonna be here 4 years listening to it? Is that what it-
I feel left out this evening.
We didn't want to.
Sorry, Dan, I almost left you out.
No problem. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, City Council, our distinguished guests this evening, and our residents at home. Mr. Banner, I will not talk about storm sewers this evening, but
I
will-
think it's fun, Dan, but that's just me.
We'll talk about brush pickup, though. Brush pickup is scheduled for the week of the 23rd, so residents, please get your brush out there. Again, the pickup is beginning the 23rd and ending the 27th of next week. The community in general has been also talking about the ash trees, and one of the questions is, where's the emerald ash borer at? Unfortunately, I don't have that answer for you, and we're currently working on it. What we're working on is identifying the trees or doing a reevaluation of the trees we had treated last year. Now, some of the thought process was that any tree that's basically showing an excess of 70% immortality, that will basically take it down. We're also reaching out to Ohio State and Michigan University, who have been the key researchers in the triage product that we used last year. Also, there's been some rumors out there that the severe winter, the cold, basically had eliminated the ash borer itself. Again, is that true? We don't know that yet. So those are all things that we're looking for, but this week will be in full gear to basically reevaluate the emerald ash trees and go out and determine how many trees need to be removed. We do have funding in the budget for removals as well, and residents will be getting a flyer telling them that the tree will be removed if that is the case. So anybody else, if anyone has questions, including our residents at home, please feel free to give us a call. You can call 630-353-8105. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to entertain anything in regards to construction, where our projects are at, or whatever else there is.
I think we're good. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Let's,
Mayor, I'm
yeah.
sorry, I had one quick announcement I thought I should probably make for the aldermen. We typically, the first meeting in July, we're usually a little bit slower on agenda items, and we're able to pass on that meeting. But the July 7th meeting, we will have a meeting. We have something related to our development in terms of the zoning recommendations. So just for council's information, we will meet that night.
Very good. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, now let's move to the treasurer's report.
Are you sure? Okay. This evening, I'm requesting council's approval of warrant number 141503 in the amount of $804,005.79 from the listed funds, and payroll for the period ended June 12th of 2014 for $267,339.88, for a total be approved of $1,071,345.67.
Do I have a motion to approve? Alderman Seifert, seconded by Alderman Belke. Any questions for the treasurer? The roll, please.
Seifert,
Aye.
Belkey,
Aye.
Kenny,
Aye.
Marquez,
Aye.
Belzak,
Aye.
Shower,
Aye.
MacIver,
Aye.
7 ayes.
The warrant has been approved. Let's move to standing committee reports. Alderman Marquez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Municipal Services Committee is meeting next Monday, the 23rd at 6:30 here in the council chambers.
Alderman Shower.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Our next admin finance meeting will be held on Monday, July 7th, 2014 at 6 p.m. in our upstairs meeting room.
Okay, and Alderman MacIver.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The next meeting of the Police Committee will be on Monday, July 21st, 2014 at 6 p.m. in the Police Department Training Room across the parking lot, pending agenda items.
Thank you. Let's move on to questions and comments agenda-related from the alderman and from the audience, if anyone in the audience wanted to address any of the items on the agenda. Christian? Okay.
It's nice to see the farmer's market in the park, but that's creating quite a bit.
Oh, okay. Christian, do you want to pull down this microphone?
Christian Sant, 410 71st Street, Darien. Seems to be parking is getting to be a problem due to farmers market. People are not obeying the no park areas. They are pulling in the driveways of the residents, pulling out, making the U-turns. I think we have to address that question. It is nice we can put up with the Darien Fest, but this 4 or 5 months of parking hassle, the curbs get damaged. Some of the vehicles are very heavy. I think we have to obey the no parking signs. If we cannot enforce that, really it's very difficult for residents to pull out from their driveway. So something should be done.
Thank you, Krishan, and I will defer to the police department to address that issue.
And secondly, the pizza, cake, and coffee is waiting for you folks.
That's quite a combination, yes, okay. Thank you, Krish. Let's move on to old business. There being no old business, I'll move on to a consent agenda in which we have no consent agenda. So let's move to new business. Item A is a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the mayor to contract with Enviro Test Perry Laboratories, Inc. for the 2014 Chemical Radiological LT2 Water Sampling Program in the amount of $8,918. Do I have a motion to approve? Alderman Belzak, seconded by Alderman Shower. Discussion. The roll, please.
Belzak.
Aye.
Shower.
Aye.
Seifert.
Aye.
McIver.
Aye.
Belkey.
Aye.
Kenny.
Aye.
Marquez.
Aye.
7 ayes.
Motion has been approved. Item B is a motion to approve a resolution authorizing an amendment to Exhibit D, which is the post-closing development agreement of the purchase and sale agreement between the City of Darien and Darien Point LLC. Do I have a motion to approve? Alderman Marquez, seconded by Alderman Shower. Any discussion?
I have a question, if you don't mind, and I apologize for not bringing this up during the work session. I just remembered it now. In the backup memo, 4.9, it talks about from time to time, the developer will invoice the city for the city's share of the costs and expenses for any supplemental plan. So shouldn't there be a limit on what the developer could come back to us, so they're not coming back to us, several times? At least I know in a, typical with a real estate transaction, on a residential, you have a date and you say, okay, we're gonna fix this or we're gonna fix that, and you have a resolution. But the way this reads, they can come back, several times.
Well, some of it might take us through the project, and there might be something actually through the construction project. I didn't, our concern was the dollar amount more than when they would invoice. Typically, they might pay the consultant if they have a proposal. They might pay that consultant at the end, and then in turn would bill us once. But we're limited to the 10.
But we're limited to 10 times them billing us?
No, I'm sorry, to the dollar amount, the $10,000.
Okay, so they can bill us well, but it'll never go over the $10,000.
Correct, yeah, the limit for anything associated with compliance with the NFR letter is capped at $10,000 for us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Then the roll, please.
Marquez.
Aye.
Shower.
Aye.
Seifert.
Aye.
Belkey.
Aye.
Belzak.
Aye.
Kenny.
Aye.
McIver.
Aye.
7 ayes.
The motion has been approved. Let's move to questions, comments, and announcements of a general nature. Alderman Marquez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jeff McCullough, who's the chairperson of the Darien Lions Club Parade, 4th of July Parade, sent me an email, and he said he's only received a couple data sheets from city council members. And he said, could you please encourage them to get that information back to him? So I said I would bring it up at a city council meeting and just ask you to get it back to him.
I have just a comment about that. What's discouraging about the process that you've gone through with the past few years is that we have to rewrite what we already did last year. Can't there be a way for for us to say, use what we created last year?
I know what you're saying, because a number of years ago, there was a gentleman who created that format. And all you had to do was go in there and change certain things. And that, when he passed the torch to the next chairperson, that kind of died, and all these guys use the same system now. What I've done is I save the data sheet from year to year, and all I do is I go in there and I change the things I need to change, and then I just send them that same data sheet. But I agree with you. It's cumbersome because you have to go back. If you haven't saved it, you have to go back and recreate the whole thing again. But I will mention that to him and let him know that. It would be, if they can save that, if they can save your data sheets from year to year and then send it to you and say, just make the changes.
Yeah, what changes do you want?
Yeah, and I'll recommend that.
Okay.
Alderman Marquez, also, when they sent us to city council reminders twice, and what they probably should have done was attached the actual application to the email instead of me having to dig through the Lions Club website to pull it down. You know, you want us to do it, because what's happened, the reason it took me 2 times is it wasn't there. Did something else. So if they want us to apply, attach the application to the email.
The thing you have to remember is he's not just sending that out to city council, he's sending it out to 70 to 80 organizations as well.
Attach the email.
Well,
Okay, any other announcements? Alderman Belke?
I just wanted to say to the chief that, I'll work with you on that parking concern for the farmer's market. Mhm.
Yeah, that's your word, yeah. Well, we have the concert going on too, so I'm sure that contributes to the parking concerns, so. If there's no other comments, would anyone in the audience wanted to, besides Mr. Sant, want to address us? You're going to have to come to the microphone to speak so everybody can hear you. I didn't hear everything you said.
Are all the aldermen coming to the parade? Okay.
No, I'll be out of town.
All right. So if you can just let him know who's coming, who's not coming, that will help the committee.
Okay.
Because we have a committee meeting tomorrow, so at least I can let them know.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
So at least let us know who's coming, who's not. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other items to discuss, or I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. Alderman McIver, seconded by Alderman Belke. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.